Hello and welcome to Metaphysical Happy Hour. I am your co-host, Cassie Clayton, and tonight is a little interesting because we do have a guest star co-host with us. So Joy, tell us just a little bit about you and what's going on with you.
Well, Cassie, it is my honor and my privilege to be part of this tonight. I know I'm replacing Tracy. This is her normal spot. I am the owner of Miracles of Joy Metaphysical store in Louisville, Texas, and I read tarot cards and do psychic stuff.
Yes, and you actually you kind of have a little bit of a big announcement. You're new.
I do have a big announcement to make. I am going to be a teacher for the University of Magic.
Yes.
And it is going to be this Sunday, September 18th, and it is 9 a.m. Pacific time, and it is 11 a.m. Central time. So I'm excited about this.
Yes, and that is an online course, so anybody, anywhere can come and view that. So exciting. So just a little bit about why Tracy is not here. She has, because she will be back next week, but she is out for the week and we're sending her love and healing and lots of light because we just recently had her book launch, which I want to make sure that gets out there for people. So, but yeah, so she is going to be having, she's going to be back with us next week. She is out this week. So, but yeah, anyway, we have a super fun guest here tonight, and I'm excited about her. She has a very, very interesting look at the tarot. She does, and how she does horoscopes, because she does Playbill Horoscopes. So that is super fun and exciting. So we are going to go ahead and bring her on. Emily, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much,
Emily.
Cassie. Hi, Joy. I'm so excited to be with you both this evening.
Thank you. So, Emily, tell us a little bit about you. Tell us a bit about who you are.
So I like to call myself a recovering Broadway publicist turned tarot reader. I have had a career in Broadway PR for about, I would say 15 years or so now. I've been in New York City, and I've always loved Broadway. I grew up taking dance class and voice lessons and acting classes. My undergrad is even in theater, but I knew I wanted to be on the business side of the business. And so I moved to New York. I interned a lot of different places. PR was a really natural fit for me. And I got to work on some incredible Broadway shows with like major celebrities, Disney shows, a lot of different Broadway shows, and really found myself drawn to the community. And during the pandemic, I've learned a lot about how community and industry are different things. Mm-hmm. And so the sort of recognition that like, oh yeah, community is where it's at for me with that. But after, the pandemic hit and the Broadway industry part shut down, everything went online. So I was doing some PR work, but it gave me an opportunity to slow down and consider, do I want to be where I am, or did I just end up where I am? And I had a lot of soul searching to do, and I chose to go back to school. So I've just started a program at Columbia called Spirituality Mind Body Institute. And it's the science of spirituality with the context of clinical psychology. And so I'll be doing that alongside the tarot work, and, sort of seeing what else is out here for me.
That's awesome. That's very awesome.
So Emily, for New York, I know here in Texas, I think COVID was a big awakening for people where people decided, what do I really want to do with my life? I think it helped us unplug from the rat race that people were in, driving to and from work. And it seems like COVID has been a jumping point where people actually decided to follow their passion.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I would say I see it across the board. There are people who have left industries and, careers they've had for decades to follow the thing that they're actually passionate about. But there are also a lot of people that don't know what that would be, and that I think that sometimes we can see so many people get so excited about a new direction in their life. And if that doesn't resonate for us, then we can feel a certain way about it. And so part of what I love about the tarot is that it is a way to communicate with that inner self and to say, like, what is it that you're actually asking in this moment? Are you asking, did that person get that for a reason? Are you asking, why not me? Are you asking, like, what's the actual question? And how can we reframe that question into one that can be more supportive to the process?
For some people who don't know what the tarot is, can you give some history on the tarot?
Yeah. So I like to say that it is a visual representation of information you hold within yourself. So while it started as a card game in Europe and Italy and Spain back, centuries and centuries ago, and was sort of what's the word I'm looking for? Embraced by the metaphysical community, at the late 1800s and early 1900s. And, we saw the Thoth deck come out and the Rider-Waite-Smith deck come out. And we saw these sort of legacy decks that we might consider in this day and age where we have such a variety available to us. We started to see the emergence of these cards and people seeing that there was intentional symbolism that was present across the board, that there was a rhyme and a reason to each of the cards, that each represented a different aspect of humanity, an experience or relationship, a person, an archetype, right? All of these different sort of wells to dive into that we have in the tarot. It's so multifaceted and so layered and so rich and textured. And that's part of what I love about it, that there's so much to it. And, I always say the cards don't lie. We can be in the moment and it's okay, now it's time to start the reading. And if we do, we start the reading at 8:05, it's going to be a different reading than if you start the reading at 8:06. There's just the tiniest little things cause the experience to be different because the moment is different. And so you're never going to have the same experience twice with it. And I also love that aspect. That reminds me of the theater where it's ephemeral. It happens only in that moment and it's gone. And the information is there and the experience is there, but it's a memory by that point. It no longer is in existence. And I think there's something really special about that.
So how could someone use tarot in business?
Oh, I love using in my business all the time. It could be silly things like, do I want to put this Facebook ad out on Monday or Tuesday? It can really be as simple as that. I like to use it, especially if I'm on the fence about something or if I'm feeling a little directionless myself. I will, lay some cards out, find a spread that has something to do with what I'm looking at. Although I will say one of my favorites these days is what will help. It's 3 cards. What will help you, what will hinder you, and what is your untapped or your unrealized potential. And that's been like my favorite spread to do lately. Because I feel like it really does give you something to sort of stake your direction on. This is something that I know is going to be in my, highest beneficial favor. This is something that I know I need to work on, that I'm going to, a challenge that I'm going to face. And this is something that I haven't even considered bringing into the fold. And yet it's going to be hugely helpful, supportive, or beneficial for me. So I think that's one way. Sometimes, it can be the really big existential questions too. Do I want to start my own business? Do I feel like I am fulfilled at this job. That's the thing about the tarot that I love so much, is it really is about what your gut or your heart is telling you, but it hasn't made it up to your head yet. So you don't necessarily have the language for it. Like, I almost like to call myself like a self-communication interpreter, because it's really about helping someone tap into that knowing that they have within themselves. And so it can relate to anything. It could be business, personal, family, relationship, friendship, what kind of coffee you want today. I mean, like, it could be as big or as little. And that's another thing, the flexibility and the elasticity of it, that I think is so powerful when you're working with the cards.
I do have another question for you. I mean, all of us know that COVID has really slapped Broadway.
Yeah.
What is the road going forward in your viewpoint for Broadway and entertainment?
Well, I think we learned during COVID that people still crave human to human connection, and that there is such a gift in the digital of the world because of the accessibility that it offers across the board, with varying abilities and varying experiences and how people interact best with the world individually. Technology has brought so many gifts to us. And also, we've learned that a large majority of people still crave that in-person experience. Mm-hmm. And so I think we're finding that while we've gotten used to staying home, going out has become an even bigger sort of to-do. And so it's probably happening a little bit less and on a larger scale. So, for example, on Broadway shows, you'll find that the big hits are going to continually be safe, right? Hamilton, Wicked, The Lion King, shows like this that have true fan bases that will help support these productions. Then you have a show like The Music Man, which has been one of the biggest hits on Broadway recently, and then they've just announced that they're closing January 1st. And my guess is because Hugh Jackman's probably saying, okay, that's the end of my contract. It's time for me to go do my next project. And so we find that you have to sort of have these really big hits for things to have legs right now. And it's a lot harder for shows that maybe don't have brand recognition or, maybe don't have a star necessarily. It's not impossible. We saw A Strange Loop win a Broadway, a Tony Award this year for a Broadway debut for the writer, Michael R. Jackson. And, he's been working on the show for like 20 years. And, it's just a very long road to get here. No stars, but people voted for it and it won the Tony Award. And then, we see that there are 150,000 more shows right behind that one that are begging to get to Broadway. There are so many ideas out there and so many stories that are craving to be told, that it's the more sort of generally commercial something is, the more likelihood it is to be a success. But, hopefully we have more of those, like A Strange Loop, these sort of underdogs that, have their time to shine.
So I'd really like to ask you a question based on your PR experience, because we have a lot of metaphysical teachers and folks that are writing books and doing different things that kind of follow the metaphysical happy hour. So my question to you is, how do I create a communication strategy?
That's a really good question. And it's a really broad question. There are so many avenues of communication these days. Some people like to focus on their social media. Some people like to focus on their email lists. Some people, it's the podcast. Some people, they're trying to get some, news coverage and earned media and publicity in that sense. Some of it is advertising. Some of it's advertorial, right? There are so many different types of communication that we have these days. And so I think the first thing to do is you determine where your audience is listening. Are they listening to you on social? Are they listening to you in an email list? Where are you finding the most engagement? And focus your energy there initially, because when you're learning how to create a communication strategy for yourself, going too broad too quickly is going to exhaust you. The same way it would in any other component of your business. If you're trying to offer a million offerings at one time, like, how do you keep them all straight? And so my advice would be, when you're starting out, to start specifically and to say, okay, I know that my audience is on Instagram. That's where I'm going to hang out. That's where I like to be. That's where they'll find me. And so then it's a matter of choosing, what that consistent drumbeat is. And I'm terrible at this, by the way. I can do it for clients. I can, do their media sort of strategizing and the publicity stuff. I don't really do the social media stuff so much, but like, I don't do it for myself. I don't, there's no rhyme or reason to it. I just like post what I resonate with in the moment. So, I will say that I could use a dose of my own medicine in this instance. But also think about what it is that is your story to tell. Like, what about you makes you you? And that could be another good, way to use the tarot. Where do I start in telling my story? Maybe you have, a story about how you sort of first came into your spiritual awareness. Maybe it's a story about how you were introduced to the tarot. My therapist introduced me to tarot. That was my introduction. Like, I was in therapy. My grandma had died. I was looking for a practice for myself. And she was like, why don't you pull a tarot card? And I was like, well, I don't have a deck. So she said, download the app. And that's how I started tarot, with an app on my phone. Like the barriers to entry can be very low. We can make these things available to ourselves. I think it was like a $10 app, which, is not nothing. I get that, but is also less expensive than a tarot deck. So, a good place to start. And then I was able to learn too. Like, I would tap my phone. It was the Osho deck. The Osho Zen Tarot deck. I'm not sure if you're familiar. This is what the actual.
I am familiar with that deck.
Yes. This is my very first tarot deck. I mean, like, it's like taped at the bottom to like hold it together. It's. But I started with the app first, and I would tap my phone, and it would flip, and it would give me the description of how Osho specifically wrote about each card. And I think some people don't like to rely on the guidebooks. Some people do like to rely on guidebooks. I'm a case-by-case type of person. I don't really rely on them generally for readings, but when it comes to the Osho deck, he is so specific with the language, and you find that you'll see similar words and things pop up across cards as you're reading sort of what his intention is behind the card, to the point that there's a through line every time. And so I will inevitably, whether I'm doing a reading for someone else or for myself, like, I will sit down and I will read you the Osho, like what he says, because verbatim, I think it's really important to hear his words. Now, with some other decks that, like, this is another one of my favorites. This is, I'm spilling them everywhere. The True Heart Intuitive Tarot by Rachel True. She's an actress, probably best known for The Craft and for, oh my gosh, I do this every time. It's a Dave Chappelle movie about weed, and her name's Mary Jane. Every single time I do this, but she's a brilliant actress, and she has a gorgeous tarot deck, and it's so intuitive. And that's, I think, one of the things I really love about it. You can look at the imagery, and you feel the essence of the card. So you don't need, much help with it in that way for a guidebook.
So I actually think that it was the part that I was kind of laughing at, and what you were saying earlier is the fact that you're like, I've got all this strategy for everybody else.
Yeah. And I don't use it for me. I was literally I'm taking a spiritual entrepreneurship class at school, and I was literally doing my homework before this, and it's like, who's your ideal client? And I'm like, they haven't really been connecting with themselves and being able to communicate with what their core wants them to do. They feel like they can't see anything, and there's mist and fog everywhere. And I'm like, this is what I have been saying to like my therapist, my hypnotherapist, all of my friends for weeks. I've been like, I can't see it. There's so much fog everywhere. It took me until today to pull out a deck of tarot cards and be like, oh, I can do something about this.
I think it becomes difficult for people telling their own story.
It can be for sure. It can be for sure. We don't necessarily always think that that some of the interesting parts of ourselves are interesting because we're so used to them.
Right.
So another thing that's really beneficial if you're looking at a communication strategy is to talk to someone that you trust. Someone whose opinion that you trust, not that you agree with. That is not the important part. It's actually more important if you have a little bit further perspectives from one another, because the further your perspectives are, the more information you'll get from someone else seeing things that you might not be able to see.
Right. For sure.
I do have one question, and I want to know, why is it important to you to amplify unheard voices?
I think another part of COVID that was really important and impactful was the social justice reckoning that we faced, and we are continuing to face in the U.S. today. And, I have worked with members of the Black Broadway community for a very long time. One of the first Broadway shows I worked on as a publicist was Memphis the Musical, which my brother was actually in the cast for a year, and then I was the press rep on the show. And so I knew all of the actors and dancers, and it was really a family atmosphere. And, I later worked on A Raisin in the Sun with Denzel Washington, and I've worked on Lion King. So I've had a lot of experiences with the Black Broadway community. And I saw that there was an opportunity for me to do more. When we were facing a lot of the protests in the summer of 2020, and there were a lot of artists that had projects and ideas and things to say, but wouldn't have access to someone who has a media list of 800 theater and entertainment writers, editors, and TV journalists around New York City and the globe. And so I had a really visceral response that was, oh, there's something I can do to amplify voices that wouldn't be heard otherwise. And so even though I am moving away from a PR practice, I still offer pro bono services for marginalized voices. And that's really about taking someone's press release that they write, so it's in the artist's own voice. We don't want to change that. We do edit it so that it's in a way that the media is used to receiving it, so that they'll be able to sort of say, okay, this is familiar to me, and they're not going to just sort of bypass it. And then we make sure that it is in the right shape, that everyone's happy, and then we send it out to our press list. And from that, I've had the New Yorker covered an opera documentary. I've had, TV stations show up at events. It's been just from, and we don't do anything once we send the press release out. If someone's interested, we put the artist directly in touch with that media person so that they can also start to facilitate their own relationship. So we take this concept of like, we're going to amplify your voice and we're going to give you the connection so that you can, start to cultivate that yourself. And I think it's just really important. There are so many stories and voices that haven't been heard and deserve to be heard. And if there's a way that I can help lift them up, I want to do that.
That's absolutely wonderful.
Thank you.
And on that note, I feel like, and Joy, you can probably speak to this as well, is I feel like in the metaphysical community and the people that we run into, I feel like there are so many times where somebody wasn't sure how to, like, their transition into the metaphysical world and how that fits, and how that if you meet somebody who's just opening up for that first time.
I would say probably where we are, and especially in Lewisville, Texas, or in Texas overall, it's really the Bible Belt. So you have these people that are opening up for the very first time because church doesn't feel right to them anymore. They're searching for their own connection to God, whatever that is. God, goddess, I don't care what label you put on it. And that's what they're really searching for. So they end up in my store because it's called Miracles of Joy. And, you know, it's like they come in and it's really interesting. This year has been exquisite. I have had more pastors walk in, get readings, or ministers to get readings, and pastors' wives who've come in. And part of it is like, I'm not supposed to be here.
Right.
You know,
there's a stigma. There's a cultural stigma around spirituality and you know, all of it, tarot, astrology, you know, mysticism, you know, psychic experiences. I mean, all of it. There is such a weighted sort of impact that has, you know, it's so heavy. There's been so much to carry that, you know, this is sort of the time that a lot of people are throwing that off and saying, but wait, that seems cool. I'm interested in that. Like, that doesn't seem so scary. Like, I can be a little curious. I don't have to be afraid of it. You know, and I think that everyone has their own relationship to their highest power, spirit, God, the universe, goddess, you know, Allah, whatever you want to say. Everyone has their own relationship to it. And that is, to me, spirituality. And I think that I personally was raised Catholic. Organized religion is not a fit for me, but I understand people enjoy the community aspect of it. Right. And so I think that we're finding more and more, to your point, Joy, that people are starting to say, okay, this isn't resonating for me in the same way. I still like having community, but I want to have my own relationship here too. And so now we're starting to see more communities like this, where people are coming together and they're saying, like, I can have all of these things. I can have that experience of community, of my own relationship. And I also, you know, if I want to, I can still go to church. I can still do that. There's nothing, you know, saying that you can't have all of those things if that's what matters for you. I think the sometimes we get lost in the should of spirituality, like what we're supposed to do, what's like right and proper and okay. And really, it's such a personal practice that no two experiences are going to be the same, and they shouldn't. Right.
I agree.
Absolutely. 100%. So we are kind of at that point of the show where we kind of shift into like doing live readings.
Yeah.
We do have a few people who've started to ask. Of course, if we've got more viewers that are tuning in, feel free to drop your comments. We will go ahead and kind of move into that.
Great.
Okay. So we do have Dinah Brooke here who said, I would love a reading. And so, Emily, we're going to let you go first.
Awesome. So I'm vibing with well, I was thinking a 2-card reading. Would do maybe 2 of them if there's somebody else that also wants a reading.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's what I get for trying to shuffle the guidebook along with it, huh? Not paying attention, just dump the whole box out. Dinah, thanks for volunteering. What do you have a specific topic that you're interested in exploring tonight during your reading? Is there something that you're like, it's this, or are you saying like, no, this is sort of just a little more of a general?
She's written that she would just love a reading. She didn't. We don't have anything
this feels more like an in general reading. So.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I am using the Fountain Tarot, which is kind of hard to see the box, but it's very light and pretty and airy and sort of metallic. So it's I love this deck, and it's got a very sort of modern design to it. All right, Dinah, whatever comes to me, it is. All right. So, well, I just went to cut the cards and somebody jumped. So let's see who that was. It was the Emperor. And actually, it jumped in reverse for me. So for those who are familiar with the tarot, we're going to do this quickly. For those that aren't, in case there's anyone that isn't, I'd like to just give a quick rundown. Two major parts, the major arcana and the minor arcana. Arcana just sort of means section. And our major arcana are I like to call them our magic cards. So when they show up, we pay special attention. There are 22. They correspond to the human soul's evolutionary or hero's journey. And we start with the Fool, going all the way up through the World, which is sort of our completion card. The Emperor is the father of the tarot. This is very grounded energy, very caring energy, very paternal energy. And I'm feeling this card for sort of where you're coming from. And this is a reverse right now. Some people like to read reversals, some don't. I'm curious if you both like to or not.
I don't read reversals.
Uh-huh.
I don't either. I tend to, unless the only way I would take the reversal of a card is if there was something that was really indicating that would be the read for it. Like usually you're going to see that indicated with the other cards that are around the in the spread itself. So I stay away from the reversal.
I actually tend to stay away from clarifying cards. I don't like pull a ton of cards during a reading. It's really usually just whatever's listed in the spread. And part of when I am reading reversals, what I like is that there are different ways that you can read them. So you could see it as something like a lot of people like to see it as like the negative or like bad interpretation, but I think that all of the cards hold the full spectrum of their meaning. So there is no good or bad. But I think it's more of something either that is an internal experience versus an external world-facing experience. Sometimes it's something that needs to be dropped from your life. Sometimes, and one that I have been thinking about lately that I really like is sort of a hanged man, energy around a reversal, where it's about seeing it from a new perspective and perhaps that it's sort of a suspended. And so we're waiting. We're in this sort of moment of pause. Please excuse the noise from Midtown Manhattan, friends. I apologize. Times Square is very loud. But so with this Emperor, I'm feeling that like perhaps you're coming from a place, Dinah, where it wasn't quite as grounded. It wasn't quite as stable. It wasn't quite that sort of affirmed Emperor energy that you would want it to be, where you're feeling that that really cared for and capable, right? You know, there's something that I don't love in the tarot, which is the sort of gender binary that tends to show up. But because it's based on the archetypes, of course, that is part of what we see. But we do love the cat always. Please allow the cat to be the star always. But we do love also that, you know, that this Emperor, he's so caring, right? He's the essence of all of the kings in the deck. So each of our 4 minor arcana suits has that ace through 10, and then our 4 court cards, like a kind of like a deck of playing cards plus, right? And so to me, the Emperor holds all of the energies of our 4 kings. We have that King of Wands, which has our passion, our drive, our creativity. We have that King of Cups, which really gives us that emotional stability and strength and that groundedness in our emotions. The King of Swords with our thoughts and our ideas, you know, and the ways we communicate, the ways we think, technology, you know, all of that air. And then with our King of Coins or Pentacles or Discs, that grounded in the physical as well. And I think the physical is kind of where we start often with the Emperor. And so I like to remind myself that it's about incorporating all of those components together. And so, you know, I think there could be something with this reversal saying like, you're coming from a place where maybe that wasn't necessarily the case. And now we're moving into the Strength card. Another major arcana card. So what you're stepping forward into is this strength. And I've always find it interesting when I look at the numbers. So this is the ninth card. Well, number 9, right, of the 10th card. And in our major arcana, and the idea of the strength is so often physical strength when we talk about it in the world. And this card is really about not just emotional strength, but the ability to know yourself and to know when to move, when not to move. The strength to be able to step back and say, this might not be the time for this. The strength to say, maybe I need to bite my tongue in this scenario. But also the strength to say, I need to speak on my own behalf. And this is what I need to do to tell my story or to express myself. So it's about really the strength in knowing of self too, I think. And again, we have it's inverted, it's upside down. So we can see that our lion and our maiden are both sort of in that suspension. And so perhaps it might take you a minute, Dinah, to sort of work up those strength muscles. But if this isn't here for you yet, it's certainly coming. It's absolutely on the way.
Cool.
What do you, I'm curious to hear either of your reactions to
Yeah.
that.
Joy, do you have any other additional insights to add to that?
It feels like that whatever she went through at the beginning of this year is moving away from her.
Mm-hmm.
And that she's come over that hump, and she's going to be moving into a more prosperous position.
Right. Absolutely. And the card that I just pulled for her was the Maiden card. And so I do love this card. It's because I just feel like it's just lighter.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and just going right along with what Joy and Emily are saying, it's starting to move. The heart is starting to move out a little bit, and you're gonna find yourself on a much easier path here. So, and she says thank you.
I love it. And what was that card? What did you say? Which card it was?
It's the Maiden. So I use this deck. It's called the Dreams of Gaia.
Fabulous.
And so I love it because it's very elemental. It deals with like earth, wind, air, fire, and has a little different layout than some of the other decks. And so, yeah, it is a lot of fun.
I love it.
So,
if I was doing my Playbill Horoscopes casting on Dinah's reading, we probably would have had Jean Valjean from Les Mis as our emperor, because he's like, reason he gets in trouble in the first place is trying to take care of his family, and that's kind of all he tries to do the rest of the show. And then for our strength card, I always think of Mufasa from The Lion King, because that sort of that divine guiding sort of sense of that he really was the Lion King until Simba was able to step into that role. So I know it's a little on the nose, but those are the two that I probably would have cast for those cards.
Fair enough. All right, so we do have another person. If we've got new people here, go ahead and drop comments. So Sandra, she is interested in her career path.
Great. All right, so I think we're going to stick with this 2 cards theme of where you're coming from and where you're headed. All right, so let's see what this one says, Sandra. So first we've got the 6 of Cups. And so our cups, remember, that's our water, our emotions, our feelings, our intuition. And the 6 is oftentimes about youthful, playful energy. There is a sense of innocence to the 6 of Cups that I think can be sometimes misconstrued as childish, like being childish. And I think it's more of a childlike essence where like we have that sort of wonder of the world kind of vibe to us. And so I wonder if you're coming from somewhere where you maybe felt like there wasn't enough of this in your life, or you wanted more of this, or maybe there was too much of it and you want something that has a little more of a less playful energy to it. Although if you're part of this community, my guess is that there's a sense of playfulness that is inherent in everyone. So, but I feel like there's something here about what brought you joy as a kid too. Like, what was the thing in your youth that you thought you would be doing with your career? And does it still resonate for you? That's like what's coming through for me right now with this one. That's interesting because I thought this was going to be like where you were coming from. Okay, well, now we need the context of where we're going. The Two of Wands. You're about to ignite somebody else's thing, right? Like that connection of someone with something. Something's about to pop off and light that fire. And that's interesting too to me. It's always, well, I guess we go the other way, huh? The six, the cups and the wands together, you know, the emotions and the passion, and how often we do find them together. And so, you know, Sandra, I wonder if maybe you haven't been in something that you're so passionate about and your career path is sort of calling you into a direction of something that that really lights you up more, and whether that's with partnership with someone else, you know, that's why I always think of the two as sort of like lighting the match or sharing the flame of the candle. But sometimes you might also, you know, see that as the sort of gathering your pieces. So, you know, we've had that initial match lit from our Ace of Wands, and now we move into the two where it's time for that to grow and to move into something else. I'm sorry about the sirens.
It's okay.
That's okay. That is all right. Joy, do you have any further thoughts on that reading?
I actually got the Sun card.
Okay.
So by pulling the Sun card, it's like if you find that what you're passionate at, you will be very successful. It has the Sun card of success around it as well.
There you go. I actually pulled this card is the Thought card. And really what I got from this was the way that she's from the way she's looking into the bowl, it's like this kind of wonderment. So I do feel like it's what you're moving forward to is bright. And I get the same feeling that Joy was getting kind of with that Sun card of, I do feel it's like there's this brightness to it because it's like, it's exciting. So yeah, so I will leave you with that.
Yeah. Like once it gets lit, it's just going to glow like the sun. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So
I love it.
All right. So we also have, and she says, thank you so much, ladies.
Yeah.
All right. So we do have Keith Fletcher here. I think we've got, I think we may have time for one more after this. May have to, So, okay. So we, like always, we will get to as many people as we possibly can. So, Emily, go ahead.
All right. In the interest of time, Keith, I appreciate you understanding that I'm going to pull a single card so that we can also get somebody else in after. So I don't take quite as much time up. All right. And let's see what we've got. Ooh, we have a Knight of Coins for you, my friend. So our coins, of course, our pentacles, our discs, that's our earth. I always get so confused with these cameras and which ones mirror and which ones reverse me every time. Gets me every time. Our Knight of Coins. Our Knight of Coins is the slowest of our knights, the most cautious, the most, I think, the most intentional. There's an essence of, sort of the slow and steady wins the race, that like there are resources that you are acquiring, that you are finding available to you, that you are, slowly but surely gathering the things that you need to do what it is that you're here to do. And it might take a little longer than you want it to, but the resources are all lining up for you. They're coming your way. You're on that path already. And so that's what this one's given me for you.
For sure. Joy, what are your thoughts?
I got the Strength card. So it's like he has the strength to go through what he needs to go through. He has all the tools in his toolbox. The other thing I'm picking up, Keith, is don't worry so much about money. I feel like that's going to flow. So don't let that be something that you're worried about at this particular time. I feel like there's a new beginning coming for you, and that it's going to give you better opportunities.
Yeah, I completely 100% agree with that, because the card that I pulled is, so in this deck, Earth relates to what would be Pentacles in any other deck. And so I got what would essentially be our Knight of
That's wild.
So,
that's wild, Keith. You just pulled the same card out of 2 freaking decks.
yeah.
That's wild.
Absolutely. So definitely I feel that there is going to be money that is going, if it is not showing up yet, it will be. So definitely don't get too caught up with the worry of that, whether it's going to be flowing or not. Because I think we all kind of got that same message for you. So yeah. All right. So we do have another person here, and we're going to call them ... I'm assuming that they have a different name, but that is the name that YouTube gives us. So let us pull a card for ...
Excellent. And it sounds like that's a love life card. So let's see. Wow. We have the 6 of Swords. There's something to walk away from. There is information here that you might not like, but this is saying you got to walk away from it. And it might not be happening yet. Again, we have this inversion, and it's giving me that Hanged Man vibe that I was talking about. That sort of, it's on its way, but not quite yet. That the sort of pause, stop and start thing of it. This might be, a drawn out process for you, ... It might take you a while to finally step away fully. But that's what you're being asked to do. You have to step away from something or someone.
Yeah.
And it might be a belief, right? Because it's the Swords. That's our air. That's our mind, our thoughts, our ways we communicate, how we, how we use technology, all of these things. Like there might be a certain perspective or belief that you have around it that just, it's got to go. It's got to go.
Absolutely. Joy, what are your thoughts surrounding that?
I got the 2 of Swords. So.
Crossroads.
which is a crossroads. The other thing that I pick up on is, sometimes the people that are in our lives are there to teach us lessons, and those lessons can be sometimes difficult to learn. What this tells me is you have some self-discovery you need to do about learning how to set proper boundaries and what you will accept in a love life and what you will not accept in a love life. And once you get that done, the one behind it is the Wheel of Fortune. And what that means is once you get to the place where you invite someone into your life that can love you unconditionally, and you work on those boundaries that are proper boundaries to set up in a relationship, that you will have a successful relationship. But I see it somewhere down the road.
And I'm going to say this because when there is that question of relationship, chances are if you're asking, you already know the answer. Or it's a situation where you're wanting that relationship to come in, but you haven't done the work to change your own vibration so that you're a match for the person that you want.
Right.
And that goes into something that Tracy and I usually talk about a lot is, and Joy, I know we've had this conversation as well. It's when you start co-creating with the universe, you're saying, this is what you want. This is what I want. This is what I want in a relationship. I want this relationship. I need this relationship. I need this relationship to be this, but we're not actually taking the aligned actions to bring that in. Then at that point, it becomes, if we're not going to take those aligned actions so that we can actually get what we want, then you're going to be in that repeating pattern. And I love that Joy brought up the idea of, or had mentioned earlier that, people are in our lives to teach us a lesson, and we will keep learning that lesson over and over again. They will just show up in different ways. Universe has a fun way of doing that, where until you're able to recognize it from every possible angle and able to say nope or yes. So yes, and it's a full co-creation with the universe.
One of my favorite pieces of advice, a lady that I know, Linda West, who is a psychic in her own right, one of her favorite lines, and I like to steal from her every now and then, is she says, when you go on a date, you're eating dinner. Just dinner, not whether he likes me, not whether how I look. You're just eating dinner to get to know that person, and you're observing how he treats the waiter, the waitress, the hostess. That gives you a clear indication of that individual that you're with.
So full disclosure, during the pandemic, I got back on the apps. Dating in New York is terrible. And I started treating it like it was a casting process. And it was like, does the prospective person get to the next phase of the casting process? And it was very interesting. It didn't land for me. It didn't work out. But, it was like this idea of, to your point, Joy, like, I'm just here to see if I'm vibing with you. Like, if that's really all it is, to see if I want to spend another hour with you or even 5 minutes.
Well, and it's so funny too, because this situation even came up earlier this week for me, because as I network and I meet people are like, I love your energy. I want on your calendar. And I'm like, okay, I've got like some shorter slots for that. Just because, again, time is of the essence, right? And so I had this one person that had messaged me, and they were like, oh, but you're so unique. You're so interesting. That time slot, that's not going to be enough. I need a full hour with you. And I was like, no. Because although I do, I do have the ability to extend, conversations, or, hey, we had a great time, let's schedule a follow-up or something like that. And that follow-up may be a little bit longer, but otherwise, as an entrepreneur, there's sometimes where everybody wants on your calendar. And Joy, I'm sure you go through that a lot.
No, I don't have any idea what that's like.
So so I like the fact that we brought up boundaries and having that set to where, yes, I can be flexible. Yes, I can be, accommodating, but there are limits. And there are limits there so that I can be the best version of me when I show up in that space, and that you could be the best version of you. And if we align and if we match, then we can move forward with anything and everything else that we want to create and co-create together. Oh, Emily, you are muted. You muted yourself.
I did. I muted myself because I was shuffling, and I felt like that was not fair to anyone. There's a really great phrase that's the way you do anything is the way you do everything, and I think that also applies to boundaries and relationships. It's not just a business relationship or a romantic relationship. It's also your relationship with your parents, with your friends, with your siblings, with your kids, with the UPS and Amazon delivery folks. I mean, it's the same across the board with everyone that you interact with. And you have to hold those boundaries in place. You have to say, I can't do that work until the check clears.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. You have to, and it doesn't always feel good to say that. And it might be really scary to say that sometimes, especially when you maybe have set expectations in the past where you were either always accessible or you would do things for free and like now I'm talking about myself. Like I was always like just ready to dive in and be like, let's just do it. Don't even pay me, like forget about it. And now I'm like, wait a minute. I live in New York City. I need we gotta readjust this. No work until we get paid and then we can do it. But those boundaries have to exist in every relationship, even if it's, hey mom, I'm in the middle of doing some client work right now. I can't talk to you. I'll call you back later.
Exactly. I get that call all the time. My parents will call me in the middle of the workday and I'm like, I can chat with you somewhat while I'm working, or I can call you later when I'm free.
Right. But also think about there's a different mentality there too. When I worked in an office under someone else's employee, they would not call me during my workday.
Right.
It's something about me being, the boss of my own time where there's the boundaries got more porous over time. Right. And now it's like, let's set these back up because that's not beneficial.
Right. And I actually just signed on. She runs her own company, but I do have an assistant now that helps me with all the wonderful things that you see me produce and for the show and all the things. But yes, so she lives in South Africa. Mm-hmm. And our conversations had started with, oh yeah, I can do that. I can do that. I can do that. And what I realized at some point, our time zones are not even close to being normal. What's 4 o'clock in the afternoon for me is like midnight for her. So the other day we sat down and I was like, we're not doing this this way. We are going to put these boundaries down so that I know that I'm not contacting you in the middle of your night or in the middle of your evening. And I was like, there's no need for that. And so it's kind of interesting because Joy's known me for quite some time. And so now I'm the one having to be like, here, working with somebody else going, here, let's set some boundaries and make sure that neither one of us burn out in this situation.
Exactly. It's for everyone's highest benefit. When boundaries are in place and when they are held and you really uphold them, everyone benefits.
It does.
Everybody wins. It's an everyone wins situation, which I love everyone wins situations. Those are good situations. Okay, so we are right towards the end of the show. Emily, tell us how everyone can get in touch with you.
Yes, so I spend most of my time on the internet on Instagram. My handle is Emily Ann MCG. That's Emily Ann, A-N-N-E, MCG. And I also have my own website, Emily McGill Entertainment, where you can see more about my communications magic, but also the tarot work that I do. So You can learn more. And there's a code on my website if you're interested in getting a reading with me for 25% off. You can use the code CUPS if you're scheduling a 30 or 60-minute reading. So please go ahead, if you schedule, go ahead and use that CUPS code so that you save some cash.
Absolutely. And Joy, please tell us how we can get a hold of you.
So my website or my store is miraclesofjoy.org, and it's miraclesofjoy.org. I am Joy Koff on Facebook as well as Instagram, and we also have a business page of Miracles of Joy Metaphysical Store that's also on Facebook.
Awesome. And I am going to give Tracy just one more, and I just dropped everybody's links in the chat, and I just want to mention that Joy's class with University Magicos is going to be is in that chat as well. So I dropped it earlier in the show so that people can go and find it. So definitely go check that out. It's going to be a really amazing course. And I do want to also just drop in there in the chat as well. I want to give Tracy's new book just one more shout out because I know she is just so excited about it. And if you haven't gotten a copy, it's just an amazing story. So go in, and I'm going to give that link there in the chat as well. So go in, take a look at it, download it off of Amazon Kindle, or you can purchase it and all the things. So I am, and if you do want to get a hold of me, I am Cassie Clayton. My company is Stargazers Unite. I create websites, logos, and brand materials for spiritual business owners. So if you would like to get a hold of me, it is Stargazers Unite pretty much across the board on all social media platforms. So very, lots of fun and exciting things for all the things across the board for all of us, I feel. So with that being said, Joy, Emily, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.
Especially
Joy, you were a fabulous swing and understudy tonight. You were really you got thrown on at the half hour and you nailed it.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It was wonderful to meet you, Emily.
Me too. Thank you so much, Cassie.
Absolutely. All right, everybody, have a great night, and until next time.
Bye.
See you later.